Logarithm's NetMon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. NetMon Freemium is a free, commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use NetMon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns and application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logarithm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. Tenable Network Security, creators of Nessus, the world's best vulnerability scanner. Jumpstart your security program today and evaluate Security Center CV, the continuous monitoring solution. For more information, visit them on the web at tenable.com. ProXPN is the leading VPN service offering free accounts, excellent premium features, and an outstanding commitment to privacy and security online. Use the discount code WEEKLY and save 50% off for life. NetSparker, the developers of desktop and cloud-based web application security scanners that enable you to automatically identify vulnerabilities in your web applications and web services. NetSparker scanners employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities with a proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at netsparker.com or email them at contact@netsparker.com. Hi everyone, I'm here with Heather Mahalik from the SANS Institute, the lead instructor. Is that right? Lead instructor for the mobile forensics course? Did I say that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
How you doing, Heather?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Welcome back to Security Weekly. It's always nice to have you on the show and get caught up on mobile forensics. I was thinking of you when the Apple story was breaking about that locked phone. And I'm sure I'm not the first person, probably nor the last, to ask you about that whole case. But I did want to get your take on it, as that's your area of expertise.
Sure. Yeah. Everyone, you're exactly right. Everyone was reaching out. Even my neighbors who have no idea what I was doing wanted to know my opinion on who was right, who was wrong, and what the direct way to go. I worked with Sarah Edwards and Cindy, and we actually did a webcast. It's archived on the SANS website. And on my blog, do you guys have, it's smarterforensics.com.
Okay, yeah, I didn't hear
Three of
that
us
one.
wrote a blog post as well on just the technicality. So what is possible? What did the FBI want Apple to do versus what could be done?
Right.
And steps that could have been taken differently, such as an MDM to mitigate all of it.
Right.
So we didn't touch who was right, who was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, because that's somewhat less.
All the technical.
Yeah, it's less interesting than the technical in some respects. So when a phone is encrypted, I mean, are there can it be impossible to break that phone? I mean, we've talked about this in the past, but I feel like that whole case, the government was like, well, it's impossible to break this phone, and as we know in security, nothing's really impossible, right? So what protections can be overcome in terms of phones that are encrypted?
Well, one, it depends on the device. So with iOS, it is, well, I shouldn't say that. Android's getting more difficult as well, if people actually encrypt it correctly.
Correctly, yep.
But with iOS, the newer the operating system, the harder it is if it's truly locked and if all links to break that lock are broken, which was the incident that they were dealing with here.
I gotcha. So, yeah, so none of the back doors, so to speak, were in place to be able to get at the phone.
Correct. And oddly enough, I had someone from the FBI in one of my classes who claimed he had hands on that device, and he was willing to openly talk about it, which was cool.
Wow, that's awesome.
Because there were so many gaps on, was it on, was it off? Did they turn it on? Did they turn it off? Why'd they change the passcode in iCloud? And he wouldn't touch that one. But he did say the phone was off when they arrived, so that link was already broken. And just kind of cleared up some of the questions. But I was surprised he was willing to chit-chat about it.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I always wondered why they didn't get the guy's finger. Because they could have gotten his finger, right? Was it fingerprint locked?
I actually, I didn't even ask that. But even if it's fingerprint locked, a lot of the tools still need the passcode or the PIN that's behind the biometric
right. I
to get
gotcha.
into it.
I gotcha.
So it may help, but not always.
Yeah, so along those lines, what's your opinion of different fingerprint readers? I mean, I really have just looked at it from a user perspective. I actually have an Android device. I have a Google 6P. which I love. It's actually my favorite phone that I've ever had, I think. And, it's funny, I have a Band-Aid on my finger, so I coated some of my other fingers to be able to unlock it, because I'm like, I can't unlock it with this hand. So I had to add some of my other fingerprints. Are fingerprint readers good? Are they a security risk in any way? Or if you have a phone that has one, should you just enable it?
I would say, honestly, they make your user life easier. They're probably safer while driving. Not that I'm saying use your phone while driving, but we all do. But they are just as strong as the password or PIN backing it up. And what's difficult with that is I had someone reach out to me and say, hey, I can take on this case, but I need to say yes or no if I can definitely do this. Which right away, I said, just say no. Nothing is definite with mobile.
Yeah.
But they wanted to. Apparently, this guy was charged of some crime. And his alibi was that he was on his phone for a 90-minute period. So he wanted to show he was physically unlocking his phone during that 90 minutes with his thumb. But you can't. It shows the thumb is the same as the passcode or PIN. So it just showed that it was unlocked. So really, I could pay you, Paul, like $50,000 and say, Paul, unlock my phone for 90 minutes while I go commit this heinous crime.
Right.
And then we're in cahoots. So it's hard to do that. But again, it's just as strong as a password or PIN. And iOS is even treating it as it's the same thing.
No, that's interesting. When we talk about privacy in our phones, so I guess in a corporate environment, what's the expectation of privacy, and how should organizations approach the privacy of the mobile phone? Because the trend, it seems to me, is that you mentioned MDMs before, that if an organization issues me a smartphone, and they want to do that because they don't want me using my own, they want some level of control, how is that privacy exchange properly handled between an organization and employees?
So from my experience, places I've worked and devices I've seen, if an organization provides you the device, they have total control of it. You have no right to privacy. And usually you have to sign off on that, saying that you realize everything. When I worked at this one location, they even controlled my backups. They controlled our backup password. They had strict MDM, and that's the way to go. The issue is when you have places. So my last job, they paid for my phone, but they didn't provide it. They had no MDM protection, and we signed nothing. So if I ever got in trouble, I would just wipe my device, and they would have no leg. But I was also introducing anything I wanted into their network, which is scary.
Right. So in terms of MDMs, what qualities should people look for if they're looking to implement an MDM? And I won't make you call out specific vendors. We do that on another show. But I know it can be uncomfortable to say one vendor over another. So I'll leave that to your discretion. But kind of aside from that, what quality should you look for in a good MDM?
They need to definitely make sure they're testing it for data leakage. One of the things I see that gets through the easiest are calendar entries and contact lists when your email is protected. And just from calendar entries and contact lists, you can get the location where people work, where meetings are taking place, dial-in information. So just check for data leakage. So essentially install it on a device, get access to that device, and see what you can actually see. But people always forget about calendar. It's so easy to examine, and it's the easiest way into that person's work email.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people underestimate the calendar and then the tie to the mobile device. On my calendar, for example, for my startup company, it lists everyone that we're meeting with to become potential clients. So we have to treat that as very sensitive data and information for attackers. In a sense, though, the MDM is a more secure way for people to have phones, because if I do lose my device, they can just remotely wipe it, correct? And
not even just wipe it, they could reset the passcode. So that's a whole situation with FBI versus Apple. If the state of California, where he worked, was using an MDM, they could have just given the passcode.
Right.
And it would have mitigated all that madness. So I tried to pull the point the finger back in another direction card, and that was my summary on that case.
Yeah. So kind of transitioning to a different topic, as you offer training in mobile device forensics, first, I guess I'm kind of curious, who attends that class? Is it the people who are really forensics investigators, obviously, or do you find that the enterprise security folks and security professionals are starting to latch onto it because it's becoming part of their jobs? What's the mixture?
It's a lot of both, honestly. And what I find from the IT professionals and InfoSec is they want to learn what we can get so they can learn to better protect it, which is fantastic. That is what we want them to be able to test. That way they know if it's secure enough, if they need to implement other measures, which devices are better than the others, and how to make it all that much more secure to protect their networks.
So when we'll start with Android because that's what I use on my phone. Like, where do people begin if they want to get into mobile device forensics in terms of tools and approaches? If you want to start, analyzing device images and things like that. Like, what are some of the first tools that you teach?
So I would say start with your own device first. People, that always creeps them out, but you know what you do on your device. You know what you delete. You know what you try to hide. So that is the best way to see what is actually stored and how to get access to it. On Android, there's a ton of free tools out there. I'll plug my book. Can I do that? So
Absolutely.
I wrote the first and second edition of Practical Mobile Forensics, and it's essentially designed for people trying to break into the field on how to use free tools and as well as commercial tools if you actually have the budget for them. So which tools do the best job at how to get into the data, what it looks like, how to decode it. So we walk you through all of that. But honestly, Android is the easiest. You could even acquire your Android device. You can connect it to a command prompt and look at it through Terminal on a Mac. You could look at it through command line in Windows. You could load it in Autopsy, which is free if you like the forensic looking tools. So there are so many vectors into it.
Yeah, a lot of it is you think of looking at the device itself and like analyzing the firmware, but a lot of it is analyzing the applications. And applications tend to store their data sometimes very insecurely, and that's what comes across. My field of view is there's a vulnerability in some app because it's the way it's storing the data. So how do you look for those problems on the phone?
Test them. Honestly, that's what I do in my real life when I'm not doing all this SANS stuff. I just do application teardown, try to detect vulnerabilities and find ways in, especially if the app is deemed to be encrypted. Is it really just obfuscated? Are they using simple base 64? What's really cheesy is when you see them adding like 2 bytes at the beginning of a picture or a video that's supposed to self-destruct. That's awesome. When it's really easy just to put it into Hexfiend, which is free, save it out, and then you can look at it in any player.
Right.
So just tearing down the apps yourself, populating your own data, talking to yourself, that's the easiest way to test how vulnerable it really is. And honestly, to do that could take you as short as 10 minutes, but it could take a few days depending if there's encryption or obfuscation.
But now it's a different story on iOS. Is it a little more difficult to get some of those tools set up?
Yes. And the issue with iOS is doing anything for free, you better hope you have a rooted device or jailbroken. And most people don't jailbreak their iPhones anymore. A lot of people don't root their Androids anymore. It's too expensive. And they're aware of the risk now with malware.
So do you have other tips for people that want to get into mobile device forensics? I know we talked about kind of introductory things. Like, where does the class take you from there once you learn how to access your device and get at the different components?
So one thing about the class, it's more advanced. So it's trying to not teach you how to connect your device to a Celebrate kit or a commercial kit and press buttons and get the output. We're assuming most people can do that. And if you can't, that's just covered in the appendix. We try to teach the harder things. So rooting, jailbreaking, encryption, bypassing that. But we literally walk through every single file that you care about, why you should care about it, how to parse apps, different tricks and techniques. So most people rely on a tool to do the job. If you do that, you're maybe getting half the data at best. But other than that, all the free webcasts, all the free trainings that are out there, that's the best way to even start, other than just getting curious and nosy and practicing on your own phones that you have. And never throw away your old devices, because it's fantastic to have older OS versions on Android and iOS to do comparisons forever. Never get rid of them. They're priceless.
Yeah, because going out and acquiring, I know some of the folks that are doing some mobile research, they're always trying to acquire those phones and stuff. So that's good advice not to throw away any devices or talk to people who are getting rid of their phones and snag an old iPhone or something.
Seriously, and look at people's blogs and websites. I try to blog not as frequently as I should. It's one of my goals for 2017. But a lot of people have these devices, and if you ask them, if you're looking for a specific app that ran on iOS 7.3 and you don't have that, just ask somebody. They may actually be able to dump it and just give you a Dropbox link with it or something. So talking to people in the community is the easiest way. Obviously through Twitter, you can get on the horrible LinkedIn. I'm horrible at LinkedIn. It's not my favorite.
I've actually kind of grown towards LinkedIn lately for some reason.
I'm horrible with it. I log in, I have 54 messages, and I'm so far behind.
It is another place to check for messages.
But if you are interested in getting any data from me or assistance, Twitter's the best way. I'm very active on it, kind of addicted to it.
Nice. So what about do you do malware analysis in the class or as part of some of your own investigations?
Yes to both.
Nice, nice. So what are some of the latest trends in malware on the different platforms?
Ransomware. So literally locking you out of your device and then making you pay to get access again.
And do you find that most people are paying the ransom, or are they finding ways around? Like, how advanced is the ransomware?
What do you think?
It's always cheaper to pay the ransom, right?
Yes, a lot of people, it depends on the device. Some of it's pretty good. A lot of it, you can easily bypass it if you just know who to ask and how to get around it. So it depends on each device what you're seeing. Android is obviously easier to get the ransomware on those devices versus iOS. But this is probably one of the more common things, other than all the information stealers that we've been used to seeing.
Yeah. Now, are most of the infection vectors, are they apps or are they SMS, or is there a certain area where people are getting into trouble?
I would say it's a fair combination between clicking on a link in your email, like the smishing type, SMS phishing or email phishing, as well as the install apps.
Right, right.
And what's difficult is it used to be you could go out to Google Play or you could go to the iOS App Store and you were safe if you got an app from there, and that's no longer the case.
That's interesting, but the Apple App Store is known to be as secure, in air quotes, right?
Yeah, until Xcode Ghost ripped them apart.
What is Xcode Ghost now?
So Xcode Ghost was our first known iOS malware that was released on non-jailbroken iOS devices, and it hit the hardest in China and North America. What happened was the version of Xcode that was being used and approved by Apple to develop the apps, so they didn't look that deep into the Xcode because they approved it, that had the malware already in it. The vulnerability was there.
Oh,
so as long as you use that known vulnerability in that version of Xcode, it would get through the App Store. They approved it, and you could post it live. Wechat was one of the ones that I know hit.
Yeah, I heard that.
So that was a big one. And it just was on these devices. I don't even know. I think it existed a while before it was actually detected.
What are some recommendations you have for people for protecting their phones on the different platforms?
Don't root and jailbreak your real device. That's my best advice there. Also, keep your software up to date. Android users, for some reason, do not stay up to date. I know they're relying on their network service provider or the manufacturer of their device to update it, and that's bad because we're putting the ball in someone else's court, unlike Apple, who annoys you daily.
Yes.
That there's a freaking update, and then they take control of it as soon as you say, okay, do it tonight while I'm sleeping. But the more up-to-date your device is, you have a lock on it. If you can use full disk encryption, use that. Don't root or jailbreak it. And make sure you know what you're downloading. If you're downloading an app and it has 1 star, why does it have 1 star? Clearly it's causing issues for people.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. That's why I went with the Google devices for both my tablet now and my phone, is because I can separate myself from the network providers. And that's obviously more costly because you have to buy the device outright. Do you find that different providers are better than some in keeping their devices up to date?
From what I hear, so network service provider, I think they're all But from what I heard, I took Josh Wright's SEC 575, the Mobile Device Security and Ethical Hacking. I'm actually in the process of it right now, finishing it up. And he claims the Nexus devices are the best at staying up to date.
Yeah, and that's what I switched to for both. Actually, I have a Pwn Pad from Pony Express, which is awesome. Awesome device. Any other advice in terms of locking down your phone other than what you mentioned? Sorry.
Well, one thing I just caution people on, and this is not to insult anybody, but some people think setting a lock on their phone means it's encrypted. If it's an iPhone, obviously you're safe as long as you're not using like an iPhone 3 or an iPhone 3GS, which if you are, that's sad. It is time to upgrade. But that's obviously using the hardware level encryption, so a passcode does protect you. But on Android, locking your phone does not keep anyone out. Like, you literally need to do full disk encryption prior to setting that passcode. And that's the issue. Some people, my dad, for example, thinks his device is encrypted. And his password is 1234. And it's horrible, but he doesn't understand. And a lot of people don't understand that. So just making sure you're truly encrypted and that you don't forget your passcode I also hear complaints where people say, I had to turn off encryption because it caused performance issues or my phone was too slow. And I've experienced that as well. And if that's the case, switch devices. Get a device that is fast enough for you, that still makes you happy, that you can still secure.
Now, on Android, on my device, for example, I like ripped through all of the security settings. And so I didn't do a passcode. I did the pattern. And then I have it so that it doesn't like show where your finger goes on the pattern. So that means there is no passcode, right? It's either you know my swipey thing or you have one of my fingers.
True, but the pattern's the easiest to crack.
Really?
It is. It's one of the more well-known keys. So it's stored in the gesture key. And that there are free tools out there that can crack it. Now, the hard thing with your phone would be if you're using encryption, would be getting the dump of it that lets us get access to that file system file that we need to crack it.
I see. So I need to encrypt my phone because I don't think I encrypted my phone.
Yeah, so right now you're probably vulnerable, and it would be easy. If you want us to try this, we can.
I'll just send you my phone. You can do like a mini pen test on my.
Just send it over, and we'll test it and tell you how secure it is.
Exactly.
And then we'll do a presentation on that.
That's awesome. Now, what about SMS apps? Like I recently switched to Signal for my SMS app. Is that something you recommend to people?
Right now, Signal is very secure on Android and iOS.
And so does it encrypt the history as well? So like if you take a forensic image of my phone, are you not able to see the SMS messages or text messages that I've sent?
So it depends on the device, but with Signal, if anything is stored on the disk of the phone, it is fully encrypted all through every version that you've ever had. Now, I say right now because there could be a version that comes out right now with some kind of vulnerability in it where the write-ahead log is open or the shared memory file is open. And that's usually how we get access to that data. But right now, that is one of the more secure applications to chat with.
And that's independent of encrypting your entire phone.
Exactly. So even if your device is unlocked and we get into it, that app is still secure.
That's awesome. Are there other apps that you recommend for security, both securing your phone and security analysis?
For analysis of the apps themselves, or what do you mean?
Yeah, like analysis of the security of your phone. Like, are there apps that can help you, or is that pretty much all done offline?
Yeah, so you know what? Let me look at well, Apple took this away, but if anyone was lucky enough to get it because they deemed it, I think, too useful, so they got rid of it. But it was called the SysSec Info. Sorry, I'm looking at my phone.
Oh, yeah, that was...
Have you seen it, this one?
Stefan Essler's... Was that Stefan Essler's app?
Yes, it's all blurry.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. And it was the best 99 cents I spent. So I actually put it on my jailbroken device as well as my real phone, which is not jailbroken. And it tracks everything. It tells you if there's any abnormalities, what's running in the background, what's eating up all your data. So if you have a spyware on that device or an information stealer, it's going to show you what's eating your data. So it's pretty awesome. Android, there's a ton of apps out there that you can get that actually do the same thing. It's just harder on iOS.
Yeah, and they pulled Stefan's app, like you said.
Right away, after like 2 days.
Yeah, I remember we covered that story.
But oddly, if you have it installed, it's still there, which is good. And it still functions. I check on it all the time.
Now, what about apps that are more secure? Like we talked about SMS and texting apps. Are there other more secure alternatives to some of the apps that we know and love for email, browsers, or whatever?
Browser Chrome is the worst, but I love Chrome because it remembers everything for me and I'm lazy. So if you do bad things, don't use Chrome.
Gotcha.
Do not at all. And even down to like all the credit cards you've ever used with the autofill, it's so frightening what is actually pulled down. And that's all stored in the cloud. So it's so easy to get that data back. And it never forgets. Anytime it clears things for you and it says from the beginning of time is a lie. It's never forgetting what you've done. And that's syncing across all your computers too and all your mobile devices. So browser-wise, I would say in private mode or incognito with Firefox, which a lot of people don't use Firefox anymore, is probably the most secure from the forensics perspective, trying to get data back from it.
Right. Now, what's interesting when we talk about browsers, when I use various apps on my phone, one of the most frustrating things for me is if I go into Facebook or the LinkedIn app, when I click a link, it's using its own internal browser, and it doesn't easily let you open that up in your default browser if you're using something more secure. That tends to be an issue for me. I don't know if there's harder evidence that that's a security risk.
Well, it is a security risk because that is fantastic evidence for us. And that's one thing we heavily rely on to get glimpses as to what you are doing if you're using a secure app.
Right. Yeah, because I feel like the Facebook browser is terrible when it comes to security. And a lot of the stuff you're clicking on has a lot of ads in it. And I'm like, this is going to infect my phone. And I haven't found a good solution to that on the phone itself. So what I end up doing, and you can feel free to recommend this to people as well, is on the networks that I control, I use DNS and other URL filtering to filter out ads and malware. So that when I'm on my phone at home, if I'm in LinkedIn and I click a link, those ads don't load inside of that browser that LinkedIn uses that I have no idea what the security is.
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea.
And so what else have you added to the class, Heather, recently? What are some of the recent updates?
We updated the malware section. So we start malware right away, day one, try to get people interested right away. All the latest Android and iOS versions and updates where the data stored is all there. From what I hear from people I know at Apple, iOS 10 is going to be a giant nightmare for us. So that'll be fun next month. Can't wait.
Are they making a lot of security improvements that will make it more difficult to do forensics? Is that...
Actually, I think they are a little more lax on security. They're just changing all the file paths again, which is such a pain.
I see. Yeah.
When it changes, because then your commercial tools lose their minds and they don't look for other versions and other data. So it just makes more work for examination. But Windows Phone 10, giant pain in the butt, super secure. You just hope no one sees it. We've added some stuff in that. One thing we decided to do was up into the Forensic Challenge, our final lab that we give you is a wipe device. And we say recover everything because we want to prove to people, even if someone tries to wipe the data, it's amazing what you can actually get back depending on the device.
Interesting. Is that because it still stores it, or is it just like any other forensics recovery, or a combination?
It's a combination of all the above. And until this manufacturer sends a student to the class, we hope it stays that way.
So it's a specific device that does it. I see.
Yep.
So, but I'm assuming other manufacturers have a more secure wiping mechanism?
Yeah, so like Android and iOS on the newer devices, we cover that each day, how to detect if the user wiped it and restored it and try to cover tracks. But if it's wiped, you're not getting anything unless it's like they forgot the SD card and didn't wipe that. Or oddly, I have a rooted Android device. It's an S5, and I wiped it using traditional wipe that always works. And instead of wiping the data, it removed my root. And then when I turned back on, all my user data was there.
Wow.
But hopefully the person would check it, but you'd be surprised.
Yeah. When I traded, so that's interesting story. When I traded in my iPhone, I was at the AT&T store. And this is when I have somewhat had phone ADD. And I was going from an iPhone to a Samsung. Would I have an S7? No. Yeah, an S7. And he's like, oh, and I lease my phones, right? Because I swap them out every year. And he's like, oh, we can take care of wiping it for you. I'm like, no, you won't. I'm like, I'm going to wipe it right here while I'm standing here. And I did the Apple thing where I'm like, you basically wipe everything out. I don't remember what all the options are. It was taking some time. And he's like, oh, we can finish that for you. I'm like, no, I'm going to stand here until it's completely done. But that wipe within Apple is a secure wipe, I'm assuming?
Yep. Yeah.
That's good.
On most of these devices, a wipe is a wipe. Whether it's remote, whether it's through an app, whether it's through the default settings, a wipe is a wipe. But on some models, not Android and iPhone, obviously, you do get lucky.
I see. So those we should take the sledgehammer or get creative as to how we destroy them.
Absolutely.
Like Tom Brady fashion.
Yes. Yes.
But I find it interesting that the culture today, like when you change your phone out, like AT&T is saying, we'll wipe it for you. And I can't imagine that there's too many people who aren't in security that are like, they just want to save time and like, oh yeah, you can wipe it for me. That's obviously a bad idea.
It is. And you would be surprised. Honestly, I bought so many phones on eBay as test devices, and I get them with credit card information in it, all their chats. I'm like, yeah, I'd be kidding me. Someone sold this with all this data.
Data on it, yeah. That's good advice for friends and family, right? When they're trading up their phones to do that securely.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Did you have anything else that you wanted to tell our audience about in terms of your class updates or websites?
Oh, the latest thing for the class, 585, the Advanced Smartphone course, finally has a GX cert.
Nice.
So it will be the only vendor-neutral certification in the world, actually, and it's released September 1st.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And what was the website you mentioned before?
SmarterForensics.com.
SmarterForensics.com. You have a blog series there, as well as you did a webcast for SANS on the Apple thing, which I'm going to go back and watch. That's pretty cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Heather. It was wonderful having you on the show.
Paul.
Take care. With that, stay tuned. More Security Weekly coming up next.